Welcome back, everyone. Middays with Gerard Rhino in the studio on this
Friday Eve.
And joining us now, Ken Newburger. He's the executive director of the Mississippi Medical Marijuana Association. Thanks for coming in today, Ken.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so since we last talked, had you on the program, I guess a lot of water has flowed under the bridge, as they say, metaphorically. So you got a bill now, it looks like, that Senator Kevin Blackwell and Representative Lee Yancey have been working diligently on. They say they've got agreement that they believe would garner the necessary votes to pass in both chambers, and they have the leaders of those chambers, the Speaker of the House and the Lieutenant Governor, have gone forth to the governor and said, we're ready to get this thing done. The governor says sooner rather than later he expects to call a special session. I don't know if that's code or what that means. So that being said, as a background, what are you hearing? What do you think about the bill? Where does your members and your association stand?
So starting with the bill and my association and our members, we like it a lot. There are only really two issues that we see in the bill, and in 140 or so pages that they have, if you only have two things that kind of jump out, that's a pretty dang good bill, in my opinion. I think that the work that Representative Yancey and Senator Blackwell have done on this bill is incredible.
Yeah. So you're happy with it?
Absolutely.
Your members are happy with it?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the way the excise tax is structured is it's a little high, and I'm worried that that's going to send people to the black market. Not the fact that there is an excise tax. I think it's just a little high.
Yeah.
And then I'm a little worried. I've heard, I think a couple of people were on here talking about the funding for agencies throughout this week. You know, that's a really big thing that Initiative 65 put in place, is that there would be funding for the program would pay for itself, and those funds would go immediately to the Department of Health. Making sure that the Department of Health, Agriculture, and Revenue have those funds is really, really important. But other than that, bill looks great.
Okay. Well, it's interesting to hear that take on it. What about some of the provisions that I do not believe were in 65, such as that are in this bill, such as requiring that medical marijuana be grown indoors? Is it a concern? What are you hearing from members? Because I know some of your members are going to be growers, right?
Right. Yeah. And a lot of them, I don't have any members that had wholly outdoor as part of their plans. Everybody had some component of indoor. Everyone agrees in the marijuana industry, if you want the most amount of control, and if you are trying to have a very controlled, regulated program like a medical program should be, indoor makes a whole lot of sense. So I haven't heard any pushback from anybody of my members that say that indoor is a problem. Okay.
So those who were sort of staged and poised to enter the industry or participate in the industry as a grower, that doesn't kind of cannibalize any of their plans at this point?
No, especially when you think about it, that the plans were to be in a very above water, highly regulated industry.
Okay.
An indoor facility is the best way to accomplish that.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know why. Maybe it's just a misconception that there were farmers out there that had lots of land and were looking to just grow the crop as traditional agriculture.
I think that's not a misconception. I think that could have been the case, especially when you're talking about extraction.
Yeah.
It's very technical the way that outdoor the quality and what you get kind of varies. So what you do is you put it through a processor to get the products for manufactured products, and so it does kind of hamper anybody who would go in that direction. But overall, you're still getting a really quality product.
Okay. So you don't see that as a barrier to entry, that where the startup cost, the CapEx, et cetera, might prevent some farmers or some potential growers from participating?
Well, it's just an expensive industry to begin with, especially in a medical program, because you're thinking about how do you get patients the products that they need. They need to know exactly what's in it and how to consume it. And so when you look at it from that perspective, rather from the perspective of who can and how often they can grow it, it changes the perspective of how you write the bill.
Okay. All right, so what about the provision that would allow a municipality to opt out within 60 days, I believe, right?
I think,
is it 60 or 90?
Okay. I think it was 60, and they extended it to 90.
I think you're right. I think Senator Blackwell corrected us on that earlier this week. So, all right. So, nonetheless, 60, 90, a short period of time after enacted a municipality. So I assume that would be something that would be adopted by those municipal governments, right?
Correct. Yes.
And so the original Bill 65 did not include such an option.
Right. And I think that it's a fine compromise that this is the way it's been structured.
Yeah.
Especially with the referendum process to opt back in.
Right.
I think that's the best way to do it for any opt-in, opt-out program for any industry in the state.
Yeah. Let the municipal government do what they think represents the views of their constituents, and if that's inconsistent, the constituents organize. They do a referendum, say, no, we think it ought to be this way.
Right.
Essentially, that's
I'm
what
a big fan of constituents referendums.
Okay.
So I think that this is a good way to do it.
Okay, got you. All right, so overall, you guys are pleased. Your organization, your association, is pleased with what we got. What are you hearing, if anything, from the governor's mansion, the Capitol, with respect to getting it done?
Well, I've talked with a couple people over there. They're reviewing what they've been given with, I think, the most recent draft of the bill and the summary that's come out in the past week or so. I think you guys put out the summary. It's a long bill. It's a long list of new regulations, new changes in code. So I think I was happy to hear that the governor said sooner rather than later, because I was worried that it might be later rather than sooner.
Yeah. I think that's holding true to his word. He said if the votes are there and the leaders of those chambers can show me where they are and they've done their diligence in vote counting, we'll call a session and get it done.
Yeah, I was a little worried that he wasn't going to call it at all, and someone asked him, when's kind of the deadline, and he said, there's no deadline. The people already asked for this, and I think that's just a really great way to look at it. Is there's no deadline to get it right. You call the special session once everybody's in agreement.
Yeah.
So I think that's good.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. That you certainly don't want to call a special session and then have days of deliberation and markups and then produce nothing. Just drill a dry hole. We don't want that. So
Not at all.
I think this makes a lot of sense in that respect. All right. So the administration of the program. By the various agencies that would be involved in that. Are you pleased with the way that's structured?
We don't really have an opinion on that, one way or the other, the way it's structured, just that the funding is there for the appropriate staff to get hired to oversee the program. Yeah. Like I said, when you first asked how I thought about the bill, that's my only concern right now. I don't really think it matters who, as long as they have a clear understanding of what they need to do.
Okay. I think I've asked you this before, and you were kind enough to answer it last time you were on the show. But again, do you have any estimates of the size of, let's just say, the overall economy associated with medical marijuana? What's the economic impact?
So it's a little different now that there are more specific regulations on the industry, but I still think we're looking at somewhere around $300 to $300 million of an industry here in Mississippi by the end of the fifth year. So it's going to be a slow grow, but pun intended. But it will grow to be a sizable industry of about $350 million.
All right. So just to clarify, that $300 million is the full scope of the vertical integration. We're not just talking about retail sales. Is that correct?
That is just retail sales.
Okay, just retail sales. So you're not really taking into consideration all the supply chain aspects.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
So everything about building facilities, everything about hiring new staff, getting people to service those businesses. They need plumbers, right? They need electricians. They need all that stuff. I'm not taking that into account. This is just a patient goes to a dispensary and buys medical marijuana.
$300 million. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's interesting feedback there. It'd be great. I don't know if your association has any interest in doing that, of knowing what the total economic impact, at a minimum, what the other vendors and the other providers and suppliers as part of the supply chain, what they're producing in terms of gross revenue.
Yeah.
The growers, the processors, the testers. I don't know all of the elements of that, but I know you do. What kind of revenue they generate internally?
That's a very hard thing to think about. It's like if a movie gets shot, how much economic business does that create for a town, right?
Yeah,
it's just hard to know.
Yeah.
But I can talk about the really seed to sale aspect of it.
That's what I mean. Yeah. If we got that data, what do you have?
I don't. I just have the gross revenue because everything compounds on its way out.
Yeah. No, I understand. But $300+ million. So in terms of taxes and fees. The excise tax, I don't know what that amounts to because you'd have to know the quantity, the volume.
Well, let's say it gets changed to a flat 5%.
Yeah.
On top of 7% sales tax, probably about $80 to $90 million for the state.
I got you. Well, we appreciate you coming in today, Ken. We'll see what happens, and I'm sure we'll be talking some more to you about
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Call me anytime.
We got MidDays coming back. Stay with us.